Yo! What is happening, my fellow artistes? It's been a great holiday season, and it's good to see you guys again. Today, we're going to be going over part 2 of how to draw hands. This session is going to be all about detail work after you've laid that foundation. Woo! And I'm super excited about this one, so let's go. So in this one we're going to be using a sandpaper strip, a hard charcoal, a medium charcoal, a number 1 smudger, a mono 0 eraser, and last but not least, a brush. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our sandpaper strip here, we're going to smudge some soft charcoal on here, we'll also smudge some medium on there as well, and some hard charcoal. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our brush and we're going to very lightly dab some soft charcoal on here. And this is where the magic starts to happen with this technique, because what we're doing is we're very softly applying the charcoal. All the while we are remembering our form and using our reference image to help out with that. Now what I like to do is I like to take my brush and I like to maintain the contours that I initially laid down with my smudger. And I do this because I want to stay true to form of each individual muscle group in the hand. And I also like to add depth to what I'm drawing. And in this case with the hand, what I'm doing is I'm very lightly, almost like trying to put a layer of skin on top of what I have laid down. And remember when you're doing this to go very, very lightly. It's very easy to find yourself applying too much charcoal. And so always do very light applications. And just highlight the line work that you laid down with that smudger. And as you can see, this, all of a sudden you start to enhance each joint in the knuckles and in the hand. What we're going to do here is we're going to very lightly add to the shadow effects of this particular muscle group. We're going to go in an up and down motion, and be careful not to add too much charcoal. It's very easy to apply too much. But we're going to do a nice U motion here, and you see that? Just like that, boom, it softens the overall aesthetic of the hand. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take some medium charcoal. Now remember the difference between the medium charcoal and the soft charcoal is the medium has more binder in it, which allows the charcoal to stay together easier. And because of that fact, it lays on the soft charcoal very easy. For those of you that have been drawing with us for a while, you know that we like to utilize the 3-layered method. And of course, for those of you that haven't, maybe this is your first video. What that is I use soft rated, medium rated, and hard rated charcoal. And the reason why I do that is because through my own use and investigation into this technique, I discovered that the main difference between soft, medium, and hard charcoals is that it's actually the amount of binder that's infused with the charcoal during the manufacturing process. And I started to use all 3 of these in tandem with one another, and I started to discover how they complement each other. The medium charcoal actually lays very nicely on the softer charcoal, and same goes for the hard charcoal as well. It lays on the medium very well. And so whenever I start drawing like this, I always utilize soft charcoal first, and then I follow that up with medium charcoal. And then I'll show you here in a second how I use the hard charcoal for highlight work and overall detail work. But essentially what we're doing here is we are beefing up the sides of the fingers. And this does a couple things. It adds to realism by giving the finger a 3-dimensional look. Now the 3-dimensional look that we're going for will be enhanced when we take our hard charcoal and start defining the lines and the boundaries of this hand as opposed to the background. And all the while, remember, the biggest thing when you're applying your brushwork is maintain the lines and the line work that you've already laid down with your smudgers. Your smudger marks, think of them as guides. This is how you wanted to lay down your charcoal and enhance the shadow work, because hands are skin, we have to remember, so we want them to be extremely smooth. And whenever you're smoothing something over with this technique, the brush is going to be your best friend. Okay, so we're just going to keep fluffing up those lines and softening the pinky here. And then when it comes to the palms of the hand, I'm going to take some medium charcoal, and I'm actually going to lay this over the soft charcoal that we laid down when we established the muscle groups in the palm with the smudger. I'm going to highlight these. Take a little bit more medium charcoal here. It's extremely crucial to remember those contours. I know I repeat myself on that, but I honestly cannot say it enough. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the Mono Zero eraser, and this is actually this is one of my favorite parts. So what we're going to do is we're going to sharpen the boundaries of this hand. Now essentially what this is the preliminary steps to when we're going to be highlighting these lines with our hard charcoal. Trick to this is just to go nice and slow and take your time. With about every inch worth of eraser work that I perform on the paper, what I'll do is I'll actually take my other hand and I will make sure that the tip of my Mono Zero eraser is clean. And that'll do a couple things. That'll save you from accidentally smudging charcoal outside of the boundary from where you want it, and it'll also give a nice clean look when you actually are erasing. So if you actually look close here in between the trigger finger and the middle finger, I am actually going to open this up. And this is the fascinating thing about a Mono Zero eraser, is you can do this kind of stuff. I always call it adding detail by taking away, you know, adding by subtracting charcoal. Like it's kind of a backwards way of thinking about it, but eraser work can, in my opinion, make or break a drawing. But essentially what we're doing is we're just going through and seeing this is why I always say why I love charcoal. It's a very forgiving medium, especially with this technique. The way we draw like this, it allows us to, you know, make those silly mistakes, or maybe you know, put too much charcoal down on the paper. You know, I like to think of you know, Bob Ross. I always looked up to him when I was a young kid drawing. I mean, granted, he was a painter, but I always liked how he said we don't make mistakes, just happy accidents. And I always try to think about him when I make a silly mistake, because it's just an accident. So now here what we're going to do is we're going to take the tip of our hard charcoal and we're going to establish those lines. And this is something that I've picked up over the years. I never really noticed this, but when I was a kid I would always run the outside edge all the way through. And if you notice, I'm not actually connecting this line hardly at all. There are gaps in between the line, and this does a couple things. This adds a form of realism that you don't even necessarily see in real life, but it just aesthetically it's very pleasing to the eye, with giving those fingers and giving that hand the dimension that you want. It adds on a whole new layer. What we're going to do is we're just going to do that exact same thing for the middle finger. I'm just going to start on the bottom. I just do nice short strokes, and you'll get better at this the more you do this. It's not hard at all, but it will be a game changer for taking your art to that next level as far as being, you know, three-dimensional and being what you want. And here we can just boom, and just like that, all of a sudden we've added we've gone another depth on our dimension as far as what we're able to produce with this method. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to dress out the boundaries of this pinky, just very slowly, all the while standing that pencil up on end. We're going to connect the finger there. We're not going to go all the way back, and this will give the pinky that appearance as if it's on top of itself. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to follow this line. I'm going to establish the outside boundary of the palm. Boom. And there it is. Bring it in a little bit so it looks like the meat of the palm is on top of the wrist. And then just more and more brush work. And we're doing this because we want to continue to add as much dimension to these fingers as we can to give them that rounded appearance. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is try to keep your charcoal off of the center of the index finger and the middle finger and the thumb as well. And make sure that you keep it white. See how here on the middle finger what we're doing is we're adding the dark shadowing to the sides of the finger, but we are staying away from the center of the finger, and this will give it like, this will make it look like that finger has a high point and thus is rounded in nature. And then for the palms, what we're going to do is we're going to follow those main lines on the palm to continue to give it that rounded appearance and that soft appearance as well. The last thing we want to have on this is extremely hard lines. And if you feel like you're going too dark, don't worry about that. I have one more little trick up my sleeve regarding a mono zero eraser and my detail work that I like to add, that I call adding by taking away. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our hard charcoal here and we're going to line out this nail very lightly. Here, take it like that. Well, this is a little trick you can do. You can take a hard charcoal and very lightly put shadows where you want them to, rather than, say, using a brush or a smudger. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our hard charcoal and we're going to stand it up on end, and we're going to very lightly follow contours and refer to our reference image and add those little bits of detail. It's not necessarily apparent when you glance at a hand, but when you start to actually study a hand, you'll notice that there are things like fingerprints and lines upon lines of integrated patterns throughout the palm of the hand, the fingertips, and even the wrist. And you can just keep your hard charcoal standing it up on end and staying true to the contours. Here for the creases, the major creases at the joint of each knuckle, we want to make sure that we honor those and that we establish them with the hard charcoal. Now think of it like this: your hard charcoal is that's your detail pencil. That's the one that's going to be on top of all of the others, and it's going to be the richest in your value as far as your darks are concerned. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to take smudger and we're actually going to establish some veins that we have here in the wrist of our reference image. And I just very lightly press on these to establish these veins. Remember, it's very easy to add more charcoal. It's hard to take it away, especially if you tend to work on a lot of commission pieces, and let's say you can't really afford to make a happy little mistake. So just keep that in mind. And you can actually take this smudger and you can stay true to your contours just like you did with your brush, but you can add, you can use this technique for adding thicker lines, or maybe say thicker shadows. You can also use the smudger, you can stand it up on end, and you can continue to establish different sizes of lines. When you actually look at the reference image on this piece, we have extremely light, extremely thin wrinkles in the skin. But then on that same token, we also have a lot of thicker and harsher lines. And lines tend to play tricks on the eye. So if you maintain contours with your line work, the eye in the black and white spectrum will actually pick up the dimension that the lines provide, whereas you might not see that so much with colored art forms in the wake of drawing. So here what we're going to do is we're just going to continue to build up that dimension, establishing those lines, staying true to the contours. In a funny way, when you think about the brushwork that we utilize, the smudger work that we utilize, the pencil work that we utilize, all three of these, I'm essentially using them in the exact same way. Now here's a neat little trick following the contour. So I'm taking the smudger and I'm running it in a very slight upside down U pattern, and what this is doing is this is giving the finger a rounded look. Remember how I said lines can play tricks on the eyes? Well, in this sense, look at the index finger as opposed to the middle finger. It looks more rounded, doesn't it? Well, here with the middle finger we're going to do the exact same thing. And make it look more true to form. And then when it comes to our other fingers here, we're going to make sure we're following the roundedness of each finger with our smudger. And don't worry if it's too dark. I got a little trick for that. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take that smudger and we're going to stand it up on end, and we're going to lay down more wrinkles in the palm of the hand. I like to use smudgers for a lot of the line work just because they're extremely forgiving. They're laying down charcoal that's extremely soft. So, alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to take a hard charcoal. We're going to stand it up on end, and we're going to add some hair to the wrist of this hand. And then what we're going to do is, to make this thumb appear as if it is on top of the wrist, we're going to add a little bit of hard charcoal here, some line work. And just like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this hard charcoal and we're going to stand it up on end, and we're just going to highlight certain spots, any kind of dark spots that you see, any lines that you want to make thicker or more precise. This technique with the hard charcoal will allow you to do that. But the biggest thing to keep in mind when you're adding detail work is that it's going to take you a little bit. You're not going to be able to get every last detail in one pass or even in two passes. Most of the time when it comes to my drawings, I tend to dedicate an entire session to just detail work. That's one of the reasons why I'm always bouncing around in all of my drawings and my other time lapses that I've made, is because I'm not finished until I've dedicated at least a good hour, if not two, just to detail work. And as you can see, the more detail that we give this hand, the more aesthetically pleasing it is to the eye. I always say that you can always add more detail. If you are questioning whether or not you should add any more detail, give it another session. But also be aware that you don't overwork a certain portion of your piece. That's also very easy to do. But when you go slow and you take your time and you practice patience in the development of your drawing and of your own techniques, a wonderful thing will happen. You'll gain confidence. It's better to move too slow than to move too quickly, especially when we're talking about drawing. And so what we're doing is we're just taking the hard charcoal here and we're just adding those lines. God, I can't get over that. It's such a neat trick. You literally just pull the lines off and it gives it, boom, just makes it look real. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some hard charcoal, and I typically save this for the end of my pieces. I don't like laying down hard charcoal with the brush so much. I tend to save it for the very end, and the reason why, as you can see, is it's extremely powerful. You can take out an entire group of lines that you just spent the last hour drawing in one foul swoop if you're not too careful. And that's just because the hard charcoal has the most amount of binder in it, so it tends to be heavier and stick to itself, and so it just kind of devastates anything else that doesn't quite have that same amount of binder in it. And then what we're doing is we're just continuing to soften up the palm and to add harder shadows where we think they need to go. On this one, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a little bit of hard charcoal to the inside portion of the middle finger. I'm going to do the same to this finger as well. But brushes, if you don't use brushes with your charcoal drawings today, I would definitely recommend giving them a try. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the Mono Zero eraser, and here we're just going to add detail by taking away, just like that. Now, just like anything, be very careful when you are utilizing the Mono Zero eraser for said detail work such as this. It's not the end of the world if you take away too much charcoal, because you can always add more. I just tend to fluff over with a brush if I've made some lines that are a little bit too harsh for my liking. But just like that, as you can see with the Mono Zero lines, it's working backwards. It's adding detail by taking away, but it definitely gives your drawings a dimension that you don't typically see too much of. But the best way to get better at it is just to practice. I know the longer I draw, the more and more I use my Mono Zero eraser. And this is pretty much it, guys. Just a couple more things to do here, and this one's going to be finished. But I hope you guys learned a lot from this tutorial. This is by no means the only way to draw a hand. It's just a way that I've practiced and identified, and that I enjoy. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Voila! So guys, that is how I go about creating detail work for my hands with charcoal. Now remember, if you get frustrated or if it's just not turning out how you want to, just walk away, take a break, and come back to it and start again. Just remember, we all have to start somewhere, and practice makes perfect. So I guess that is it. That is all I got for you guys this week. And remember, if you guys enjoyed this video and you find yourself enjoying all of our videos, you should probably like and subscribe. Oh, and be sure to hit the bell, ding, so you guys can be notified when our latest and greatest videos come out. My name is Braden, and you guys have just been tipped off. I hope you guys had fun, and I will see you in the next one.